All right, thank you everyone for attending this session. My name is Cheryl McKinnon. I recently joined AIIM as Vice President of Marketing. It's my pleasure this afternoon to introduce the moderator of the panel as well as our esteemed participants. Our moderator today for this session is Lawrence Hart, who also joined AIIM in early 2012 as the Chief Information Officer after many years of a successful consulting career, primarily in the content management space, working with Federal. Our next participant is Robin from Box, representing the cloud side of the debate. Robin's the head of product marketing at Box and is an advocate and expert on enterprise cloud computing and how it helps transform both enterprise as well as the software business itself. He's got 10 years of experience with companies such as Salesforce, Veritas, and Vignette, and likes marketing innovation. We then have Lubor Ptacek. He joined OpenText as Vice President of Strategic Marketing, 2008, was it?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. Lubor is the VP of Strategic Marketing and the General Manager of the Microsoft Solutions Group at OpenText. Prior to joining OpenText, he held positions in marketing, product management as EMC, Documentum, Vignette, and Novell. Currently, he's also part of the board of directors for AIIM, and we're very pleased to have him in that role. We then have Roland Benedetti. Roland is VP of Product and Marketing for Nuxeo, an open source enterprise content management provider. And he was formerly Vice President of Product Management at Easy Systems. And so he brings a lot of knowledge and expertise in the area of open source, as well as looking at the different economic models that open source helps facilitate. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lawrence to set the stage for the debate.
Thanks, Cheryl. So we have some ground rules. These people do occasionally get along, but not necessarily on this topic. The topic is the future of content management, and we thought it would be interesting to see it from the perspective of three vendors who were starting from three very distinctive points and to see how they envision the future developing. The ground rules are no selling. They can say nice things about someone else, but not themselves. No speeches. After a minute or two, we're going to try to move on. We only have half an hour. We have 3 speakers, and we'd like to get to more than just 2 or 3 questions. We do want questions from the audience. I have one question I'm going to lead off with, but at any point during that period, if you have a question and you think you want to get involved, raise your hand, and we'll take that question. Otherwise, I'll just move into my next prepared question. But we definitely want to get questions from the audience because I can ask them these questions offline, but this is a chance for you to ask the questions. We are trying to stick to the rule of speak ill of no vendor. So, don't say anything bad about a vendor. A group of vendors as a whole is fine. You can say something about, all open source companies are just completely clueless. That's OK to say. But you couldn't actually say that Nuxeo was completely clueless. That would be completely unacceptable. So, and by the way, it's not a true statement. Illustration purposes. So the point is, we like some back and forth, but what they're really representing portions of the industry. They are not here as their companies. They're here as representatives, and that's what we want to get here today. So I'm going to go ahead, put their pictures back on the thing, unless someone misbehaves, and then we'll go back to the ground rules. And we'll start off with the simple question of, in the next 3 to 5 years, where do you see content management going? And we'll start with Robin.
So obviously, I represent the cloud sector, and I firmly believe that the future of content management is in the cloud. And the reason why is because the cloud enables companies to get a lot more value out of their content. First of all, the cloud, of course, as we've seen during the last 10 years, maybe even 15 years or so, is much more scalable. It's much more available. It works on any device, no matter where you are in the world, which enables you to get to your content and actually get meaning out of that content, no matter where you are. Now, of course, I think to get more meaning out of your content, there's a couple of key drivers that are really driving kind of the future of content management. Social is going to have a big impact on how you interact with content. Right now, content still kind of lives in silos. You have one system maybe through your phone or your iPad or your desktop computer. Then you have other systems as well. And every application that you use today traditionally creates content inside of those silos. If you're on your iPhone, like most of you probably are, or your iPad, I see some of you have, if you create a piece of content in Evernote, for example, or you take a photo, all this content is stored in discrete systems. And the future is a place where the content is much more readily available through all your applications. So kind of a universal content layer is what I believe it's going to be like. Because by having that layer, it means that you can get much more meaning out of your content no matter where you are in the world. So, but when you add social on top of that, so you can discover content that makes sense to you, content that's meaningful to you, I think that's where the value really takes off exponentially. For example, in your business, you should have the most important content bubble to the top for you based on who you are, the interactions you have every single day with the other people in your team or in your company or maybe even outside your company. Content should then bubble to the top based on those interactions. So that's one trend. The other trend I think that's really having a huge impact on content management is mobility. I think this notion that there's an enterprise or an office is kind of dead. There is no office anymore. I don't think there is an enterprise anymore. The office is where you are, right? If you're in Starbucks, if you're in an airport, no matter where you are your office. So the fact that trying to contain content inside of a company is kind of an antiquated view, I think. And trying to lock it down, and I'm not a particularly fan of on-premise solutions because I think it gives a false sense of security. It makes it seem like you have control of your content, but in fact you have not. You don't, right? Okay. Next. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Sorry.
All right. So I'm Lubor Ptacek from OpenText, and I guess I've been chosen to represent the traditional software vendors. So I'm supposed to be the boring guy, soon to be obsolete, and to be replaced by new business models. Right? Now, don't make any mistakes. Before we had the term cloud, we had the term SaaS, and before that we had the term on-demand, and before that we had hosted, and actually at OpenText we've been doing all of that for many years. But let's talk to the traditional on-premise business model. I do believe very strongly that the convergence of all these cool trends, mobility, social, analytics, and even cloud is happening, and it's creating a lot of excitement, a lot of new opportunities to do business. All of that will happen in the future. But what I believe is that in terms of the deployments, customers are not all at the same level of comfort with are we going to go all the way into the cloud, or are we going to stay all the way on premise? In fact, there is a spectrum somewhere in between. Every customer will have to find themselves. I talk to a lot of highly regulated organizations. Cloud is kind of the last thing on their mind today, and they will be very careful about that. Now, is it never going to happen? I'm not saying that. I think that there will be applications, there will be specific opportunities for them to go for the cloud. There will be solutions that they will deploy in the cloud. But kind of flipping the switch and going from 0 to 100 overnight and tossing everything into the cloud, that's not going to happen. The time frame was 3 to 5 years. Now, we have roadmaps that go that far, so we have a pretty good idea about what will happen in that time. I can tell you that a lot of customers will be somewhere on that spectrum from full-on on-premise to full-on in the cloud. I think actually the same is true even for other aspects, right? We have customers who are very careful, conservative. We have customers who are very open, maybe a little more relaxed about sharing, those kind of things. Again, every organization will have to find their comfort spot on that spectrum. It's not going to be that everybody will go social and kill off their email systems. Not going to happen. It's also not going to happen that there will be companies that do nothing but email. Everybody will have some kind of mix. And I believe that the future of ECM is finding that space for every single organization and for us as a vendor to provide them a solution that allows them to do that.
Roland?
Yeah, so I'm representing open source. To your question, I don't know if you expected it would be either cloud traditional or open source.
Whatever you see the future as. It doesn't have to be the architecture. It can be
because
magical.
In my opinion, I think it's definitely either one of us or the other, but it's really a mix of this. My opinion about content management, and I've been in this space for like 10 years now, so some people have longer track records, but I think it's already pretty good, is really that this space needs to evolve to something different where content management doesn't represent something as an entity, but more as a process that's everywhere, in every software, in every application. And that's one of the things we are chasing at Nuxeo, basically, is to enable people to build applications that basically, do things with the content that belongs to what we used to call ECM. So content management needs to get to a point where it's transparent. And why do I think this? Basically because I listen to my customers. We have something like 400 customers at Nuxeo, I guess. I would bet that 80% of them, when I ask, do you know what a content management system is? I mean, most of them, they don't know. What they know is the application they run, the process they run. They don't call it ECM. They call it business app that is doing something very specific, like whether it's contract management, whether it's HR processes, many things like this that are really business driven. So my opinion about the future is that us, vendors, providers, need to provide technology and innovation that will make basically content management much more seamless, much more smooth, and basically silent, so that people can focus on their real needs, which is not something virtual, not something conceptual, but something concrete, which is a business need. So that's in short my thinking, and I definitely think there's room for traditional approach, for cloud approach, and I definitely think open source really can speed up the innovation process that's requested to go there, basically.
Okay.
Did we have a question?
Yep, we have a question over here. So I'll start here, and then we'll go there, and we'll work around.
So we talk about social media, and I think what's ignored here is society. What has society, where has society been? Where is it now, and where is it going? There was a time when a village raised a child. Now, most kids don't know what their neighbor looks like if they saw them on the street. Everyone's works and operates nowadays in their own silo space. Half the times you walk down the subway and everyone's on their iPhone. They couldn't even tell you what the weather is. So I think that for society, there is a tendency to want to silo and to think in silos. I think, to Robin's point, I think you're describing where we all want to be, but not really where we're at. And I guess to Lubor's point, you're right. Everyone is used to dealing with things in their own kind of space, and they can't think outside of their own little box. So the question is, how do we get from Lubor's area of expertise to Robin's? How do we get there? I mean, do we have to influence society? I think that's where a lot of these social media applications, they influence society, not the society influencing the technology.
I think you make a great point, and I would agree. I would say yes and no on your point of that people are more disconnected than ever from their neighborhood and kind of society, but at the same time, they're also more connected than ever, right? It's kind of an odd dichotomy that, yes, people are not talking as much to each other. You walk down the street and everyone's checking the train schedule, the news, and the sports scores, or whatever it is, their Twitter feed. But at the same time, we're more connected in the online world, in the virtual world, right? Suddenly, that's why you've seen these revolutions happening in the Middle East, because everyone's suddenly connected. And you can start a revolution by having a voice and being heard and having that message that you care about propagate throughout. So I think we can take these lessons, I think, from what we're seeing in social media, where everyone is more connected, and apply that to, I think, content as well. Content used to go from following a very rigid workflow, right? From one person to another, from that person to another. Nowadays, it's much more fluid how content moves around from one person and department to another, both inside your company and outside. So I think we can take a lot of lessons from social media and apply those lessons of discoverability, of interconnectedness to content. I don't know if that answers your question, but any thoughts?
I think you are hitting on an interesting problem that I've been thinking about a lot, and we are certainly subject to some evolutions in our society, and we also see that different cultures are responding to it differently, right? There's the well-documented case that privacy means different things in the United States versus Germany or France. Enough said about that. But I think that there are also some opportunities, right? By embracing some of the new tools, and especially in the consumer space, it's much easier to stay in a regular contact with people that otherwise I wouldn't be in contact, right? How many of you have met somebody for the first time that you knew from Twitter or Facebook? Happened to me about 5 minutes ago. Yes, Shadrach. Hi. I mean, that's phenomenal, right? That wasn't possible 3 years ago. at the same time, I'm looking at the pictures of my family. I've estimated there's about 1,000 times more pictures of my children than there is of me as a child, right? It simply wasn't that well documented. My childhood is not as well documented as my own kids' childhood. And I think that those are benefits that we can really leverage going forward, right? So we will have to learn with the perils of it, because there are absolutely some dangers there. We will have to adjust. I think we will have to evolve our culture to maybe have greater tolerance to certain exposure, and on the other side, be much more careful about certain things. But I do think that the society can benefit quite greatly from these technologies.
Indeed. So to the question, which is, if I understood well, like, not where do we go, but how to get there and how to enable people to go there. I think we have something very easy to do, which is just watching how the web went there. I mean, just thinking about the last 10 years and how the consumer technology evolved, what made all this possible. And I think a big chunk of that is about collaboration and about being open in the way we make technology. That's where I definitely think building open source technology speed up and enable things. It will enable people going from one point to another, product-wise, what we will do with the technology, with the web. So the social networks are an obvious example of that in the consumer side, and now we have to do the same on the enterprise side. But it's not something new. It's obvious to me. It's the way to make collaboration happen. Innovation is about collaboration. And open source technology, for instance, can enable this. This is for the technology side, for the vendors, for ourselves, I think. On the information worker side, it's the same. It's all about enabling engagement between the organization and the individuals. But there is a parallel. In fact, it's almost the same thing. You must just be open and encourage something that's dual when it used to be unilateral.
So we're going to take a next question, but I want to make an observation as kind of a parting thought. I've observed that with all our weak connections, our high school friends and stuff, we know much more about them than we would have without social networking. I talk to my best friend less than I would have because of social networking, because I see the pictures, I think I know what's going on, but I don't get the depth that I used to. And part of what we have to do in the enterprise is get the depth of the content that's out there. So, it's in the depth of the relationships as well. So I disagree with all of you. So, but that's why you're on film and I'm not. All right. So next question.
So my question was more around the cloud versus traditional versus open source. For late adopting, are you happy about that?
Yeah.
So for late adopting companies especially, do you see hybrid models of where maybe your digital asset management is in the cloud, but your personal identifiable information is still traditional based or maybe private cloud, or where do you kind of see that going, or is it an all or nothing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I definitely think on the ECM side, the very near future, the next years, is not all in the cloud or all on premise. I mean, hybrid models are the one that we will see everywhere for sure, and we already see it. So part of the old silo is now on the cloud, and part is still in-house behind the firewalls. And yeah, you need to be able to accommodate any kind of setup where, when it comes to the question, where do I put my data? The data is not in only one place now. It must be spread, and it's hybrid storage all over the place. Yeah, and cloud is a great asset for that, actually.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm not a big fan of private cloud because I think it kind of it's a false term for something. It just takes your traditional architecture and maybe it moves the zip code to a different location. Sometimes you have a private cloud in-house, maybe, right, where it's managed by another vendor, or maybe it's in a data center, but you don't get all the benefits of a traditional cloud model. That's where it's, you get all the latest innovation from a vendor. Anytime they come out with it, like a Salesforce, right? Every time they come out with a new release, everyone is on that release and they get it right away. In a private cloud model, usually it's staggered based on how many customers you have. The scalability benefits are not quite there as well. So I think I'm not a big fan of private cloud. Hybrid cloud, I think there's going to be probably a good case can be made for putting some content in the cloud and some content on-premise. Some content in the cloud, some content on-premise, depending on the sensitivity of that content. But I think more and more content is going to go into the cloud because the on-premise version model really is, I think, a false sense of security. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but if you think about the WikiLeaks example, right? The guy, I think Bradley Manning was his name, he put all the data on a USB stick. And how many of you haven't taken data home on a USB stick from a on-premise content management system? Or suddenly you need the file at home and you email it to yourself. So even though there's this sense of, oh, it's secure because it's on-premise, it's actually less secure, in my opinion, because people try to circumvent the security measures set up by most companies. Whereas if you have it in a system that is integrated, of course, with your security protocols and security measures, then users don't try to circumvent it. You have to give users what they want, because if you don't, they'll bypass you and circumvent that this is what you've set up. But you also have to integrate it with your Active Directory, your other single sign-on services, and so on. It has to be the best of both worlds. If you don't have the best of both worlds where you meet users' needs and IT needs, you're not going to be successful. That's why I think more and more of these applications are not succeeding. People are migrating to Dropbox or SugarSync or YouSendIt in their private lives because IT is not meeting their demands. Right? And that's a symptom of what the underlying problem is. So you have to meet the demands of what they can use, but also give that integration into security architectures.
And that soldier is in jail right now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just checking.
No, absolutely.
It's an interesting question. I met with a customer recently. It was a customer out of Brazil, and they told me proudly, well, we've just switched our email to a cloud-only email. And some search company provides some cloud email. So I asked, like, really, that's pretty impressive. He said, yeah, except for some of the mission-critical departments like HR, finance, recruiting, and the executive suite. Like, okay, so what do you do with those people? Well, they still use Exchange, and they kind of do. And how do you synchronize your users and user groups and aliases? Well, that's a problem. That's where we need help. Oh, and also in a lot of our European subsidiaries, there is a provision that the content has to stay on native land, and we have no idea how to deal with that. So there are some challenges, right? And I actually do believe that the hybrid scenario is quite a realistic and pragmatic scenario that we will be seeing, because I think that when you start considering all the challenges to actually move into the cloud, especially from an on-premise situation, it might not be worth it, right? Besides that, people are kind of attracted by the pricing model of the cloud applications, but actually not that cheap, right? Not to poke at any vendors in the room or at the conference, just check it out. The price list is pretty available online. And when you multiply 3x for 3 years of a typical enterprise software deployment phase, it becomes actually maybe less of a convincing scenario. So I'm not anti-cloud. I actually do believe that there is a good case for cloud. I do believe that certain applications should be in the cloud. We've been using all kind of HR applications for many years that were cloud-based. Almost every US company is using ADP, which is a cloud-based solution for your payroll processing, right? So there are good use cases for that. But I do believe that it will always be a mixed, or call it hybrid scenario.
So we're running out of time. If y'all are patient, if we go a couple minutes over, because there's not another session next, we're going to have one more question and then a quick parting thought. So.
Yeah, well, you're talking a lot about where content is going from the point of view of the sender. But the receiver, the people who are using it, getting more problems with huge amounts of content and finding the right things. So I find it very interesting to talk about cloud or not cloud. But I, as a customer, what the heck, the cloud, I want the right information. So can you say something about that? What's the customer going to find out about better getting his way to his information, the things he needs?
Yeah. So I'll start for one.
You haven't had a turn to start, so go ahead.
And so I think that you are hitting on a very critical problem, right? In fact, claim that IT departments have sort of shifted in their modus operandi a couple of years ago. Until then, the mission was to provide access to information. A few years ago, we've gotten to the point where we have information. We have lots of information. We have probably way too much information. And actually dealing with that and getting something usable and actionable is the primary challenge. I think in the space of content, and whether it's social media, mobility, records management, doesn't matter, there is a huge case for analytics, for auto-classification. We need to analyze the content itself. We need to analyze the user pattern behaviors. We need to analyze the popularity. We need to analyze the relationships between content assets and between users. There is a lot of value to derive from that to help the end user to actually get to the stuff that matters, because I completely agree. We are flooded by content today.
Yeah, definitely. And on these fields, for instance, we're doing a lot of work around semantic technology. And the global, the idea, the thing we envision is basically it will provide us way to categorize automatically and smartly the information and to provide guidance to any user to reach the right content at the right time on the right form, depending on where he is and which device he uses. So there, again, I think there's a huge need for innovation. And again, if I need to talk about my category, I definitely think that's key here. We are basically in the middle of a disruption, and we really need to speed up and finding new solutions. That's why we try to go fast and collaborate with some communities, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think big data is going to have a huge impact on the meaning of our data and our content, because the more we can analyze and derive meaning from the content and send it to the right people at the right time so they can make the right business decisions, I think we're going to get exponential value out of that content. We can share it easier. We can find it easier as well. And I think, again, I think that becomes much more easy to do in the cloud because you get that innovation instantly. You don't have to wait 3 years for the next version of technology to come out for you to get that innovation. There's constant innovation that happens in the cloud, so you always have, if you give feedback to a vendor, you usually can see that innovation coming out in a few weeks or a few months. You don't have to wait a long time. So I think there's another benefit of cloud.
So we're out of time for questions. So
one more question.
Excuse me? We're past time. Is there any objections to another question? Go ahead.
All right, is this on?
Oh, wait, before you ask the question, one quick thought. So when they were talking about the hybrid, keep in mind that all of your information is not in that content management system. You talk to other systems, so you're going to have a hybrid one way or the other. So, all right, question.
Thank you. It's a quick one, but I'll just say as an ex-British Army soldier, NATO could not run without USB memory sticks. So,
point taken.
One answer from each of you to keep it quick. What do you see as major dependencies for other technologies, other industries, dependencies for content management?
That is a
Robin, your turn.
Okay, my turn.
Of course,
since I'm the cloud guy, internet connectivity has to be pervasive enough. I think that is where it kind of always falls short right now, because Wi-Fi is getting better at home internet, at work, but still, sometimes, I mean, just on an AT&T phone, you can hardly ever get online. So internet connectivity has to become a lot more reliable and a lot more stable, I think, for the cloud to reach the next level.
So, okay. I think that the biggest dependency for us today is the user experience, and more specifically the device that the user is using. There's been obviously a huge amount of evolution in that space. The IT departments have really been caught by surprise in many cases by the iPad, right? The iPad has changed everything, because until the iPad came, the IT was in the position to basically dictate, okay, here is your Dell with Windows XP, and everybody of you will use the same device, right? And life was easy. When the iPad came, what happened was the first guy who got it was the CEO. And the IT department was not in the position to say, no, we are not supporting this, right? So iPad changed everything. And as a result of that, the floodgates have opened. And the old notion of having a single stack and single provider, blue stack, red stack, whatever stack, is out of the window. And as a result of that, we now are flooded with a plethora of operating systems, devices, form factors, and software standards, right? Flash, no flash, all that kind of stuff that needs to be taken in account. And that's causing some interesting challenges. You know, some of us vendors have solutions for those challenges, happy to engage, but not selling.
He didn't say it worked, he just said they have solutions. He asked for it.
But that's the dependency I see.
Well, so on my side, I think the previous dependency was very clear to me, was the desktop. The desktop, which we narrowed into the browser at some point. And the next dependency is actually, and you might be surprised because I don't think cloud as you means it here belong to enterprise content management, no offense. I think the dependency will be cloud services. It's actually a good one. Every individual now uses Box or others, including the big search engine company you mentioned. And that's a huge dependency for us enterprise content management vendors today. We need to make possible for everyone using our systems to still use this system as well. So integration is key, and dependency is basically not anymore the desktop, but the services.
So I'm going to ask them one last question, which they can answer in 5 words or less, and they've not been told what the question is. They didn't even know it was coming, so this will be fair. If you had to pick one technology, one trend, one anything besides content management, but that will impact the future of content management to watch going forward, what would it be?
Mobile.
Analytics.
Semantic.
Semantic. OK. So mobile, analytics, and semantic. So we'll see. So in a year, we'll see which one was right, and we'll hold them credit. So let's give a hand to our panelists.
3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years.
Thank you.